everybody? Welcome to The Sweat. We got lots to get to on today's show. NBA, NHL, NFL, more NFL. So speaking of NFL, say hello to DraftKings contributors Pierce Dietrich, Jeff Ulrich, and RotoWire's Alan Seslowski. Guys, it is NFL chase or fade time. So agree or disagree with these statements about this weekend's NFL divisional round. So over on the DK Sportsbook, you can find a section called Divisional Specials. One of those is who will have the most passing yards for divisional weekend. The favorite right now, Tom Brady, plus 400. Chase or fade that Brady will be the top passer this weekend, Pierce?
I'm going to fade this. It's dangerous because we know that Tampa is going to go out and throw the ball. I've said all season Tampa needs to run the ball and then pass at the end of the season. Well, they've just passed all season long, and they're going to continue to pass, and they don't really have any running backs, and they're facing a good rush defense. But I would rather go with Joe Burrow against a terrible Tennessee team that doesn't deserve to be in the playoffs. 24th in terms of strength of schedule. You look at what Tennessee does against the pass, bottom third in yards allowed, bottom third in yards after catch, bottom third in ADOT. That's kind of what you want to attack with the Bengals, with Jamar Chase. It's going to be Joe Burrow that lights up the Tennessee Titans this weekend.
All right, Jeff, Tom Brady plus 400. Do you think he'll be the top passer this weekend?
I mean, we just can't get one segment, Pierce. One segment without Pierce just trashing the Tennessee Titans.
Okay, a segment next week when Tennessee's eliminated.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Too soon.
Wow. Oh, okay. Anyways, no, look, Burrow maybe, but the Tennessee Titans pass rush could certainly get to him in this spot too. I think Burrow is one of the players you can consider, but I'm definitely fading Tom Brady in this spot. And the main reason why, look, we have a game with Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen in it. And I really think that you should probably just be targeting there. You look at the setup of all these different games, you know, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, beat up offensive line, the Rams coming in on the road. I could actually see that game just being a little bit more like slower paced than people realize. Aaron Rodgers and the Packers could just run up the score and get ahead so they don't have to throw much. But I think Mahomes and Allen are in a spot where they're going to be going at it all game. I think you've got to take the plus 450 on Mahomes. I believe he should be switched with Brady here in the odds, and I think that's where your best value lies.
All right, Alan, where are you going?
I'm surprised to see Brady as the favorite, but maybe it's because more casual bettors are coming into the marketplace as the games become more high profile and New York and other states are legalizing. Brady's the name brand player that the market's going to gravitate to. But let's not forget, Brady's without Chris Godwin, and man, could they use Antonio Brown right now. I wouldn't care if he went full streaker. I would have kept him on the team. As Jeff just said, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs look like the actual real Chiefs that we used to know last week against the Steelers. And I know KC's defense is rock solid, but Josh Allen is a man on a mission right now. DK Sportsbook, you're giving me plus 600 on Josh Allen? Yes, please.
All right, guys, moving on with the divisional specials, we have the most receiving yards for this weekend. Currently, for good reason, Cooper Kupp is the favorite in this category at plus 500. But Kupp can't be the guy every week. Can he or can he? So chase or fade that Cooper Kupp will not be the top receiver for the divisional round, Jeff.
I mean, Cooper Kupp has proven that he can be the guy every week. But look, we are in kind of a different season here with the playoffs. And like I said, I am expecting the Rams, if they get up in that game, to maybe just be a little bit more conservative than people think. And the real thing here is just, I mean, the odds. Like, we've got a couple players in A.J. Brown and Tyreek Hill available at plus 1,300 and plus 1,600. I mean, maybe they're not as consistent as Cooper Kupp, but I mean, Brown, I get that he's in a low-volume passing offense, but Matt, the matchup here is probably the best on the board in terms of all the top receivers. Eli Apple, a guy who could be guarding him here, was picked on last week. Look, we've seen A.J. Brown down the stretch. He basically won the San Francisco game for the Tennessee Titans just with how dominant he was against weaker corners. Plus 1,300 here is way too big. And then give me a break. Like Tyreek Hill at plus 6, I get it. The Bills are a good pass defense. Tyreek Hill looking the healthiest he's looked, in my opinion, last week. Finally scored on a go route. I'm not sure if people are paying attention to that. This is just way too big odds for Tyreek Hill.
Alan, chase or fade Cooper Kupp will not be the top receiver for the divisional round.
I am going to chase that he's not going to be. That's like a double negative, right? But either way, Kupp averaged 114 yards per game in the regular season, and that was insanity. If you had him on your fantasy team, he was an auto play in DFS no matter what the cost was. And however, though, Odell Beckham is now fully integrated into the game plan, and Cam Akers is defying all injury logic. He looked great last week. I expect Kupp to have a great game, but they don't need to rely on him like they did earlier in the season. The Rams may have been record chasing a little bit bit towards the end of the season with Cup. And as Jeff just said, A.J. Brown at plus 1,300 stuck out for me. The Titans will need A.J. Brown, and who knows what we're going to get from Derrick Henry. If Henry's himself, great. A.J. Brown will have more room to operate. And if he's not, I think you could give A.J. Brown 15 targets coming off the bus. Not to mention, Brown can house any of those short slants. He's a yak monster.
All right, Pierce, what do we think?
Fade that he is not the top receiver because he will be the top receiver. You can dismiss last week's game. That was a lot of game script. And also, Akers had a really good game. I don't see Akers running all over Tampa. I would be, I expect Los Angeles to have to pass the ball. And if that's the case, in a must-win game, obviously, they're going to lean on Cooper Kupp. Now, you mentioned yards after a catch, Alan. Look at the number one yards after the catch receiver in football. It's Cooper Kupp at 846, and he's facing Tampa, who ranked 27th in yards after the catch. They line him up everywhere. They get him the ball. They let him run wild, and he's going up against a team that tends to let receivers run wild after catching the ball.
All right, looking at some of the other specials, we have some interesting combos like Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon to combine for 150-plus rushing yards. Now, this is Derrick Henry's first game since October, so, do you chase or fade that these two will not hit that number? What do we think, Alan?
Let's start with Joe Mixon. Since he is playing in Tennessee, the Titans are by far a sneaky worst team to face for your running back. They allowed under 14 points, DraftKings fantasy points per game, and only one receiving touchdown to running backs this year. So we know that Tennessee's defensive line is great, but the linebackers are pretty good at shadowing runners too. So if Cincy is going to beat, if Cincy's going to win, they're going to have to do it through the air. Making a projection for Derrick Henry is kind of a guess. He was inhuman-like, getting 50 carries a game in high school, monster workloads in college, but weirdly was sparingly used in his first couple of years of the NFL. So you need to decide, is his injury breakdown because of his workload, or was it just a freak thing? I'm assuming Henry is himself if he's back, but betting on it is where the rubber meets the road. I would fade this prop.
Pierce, would you bet it? Alan seems a little like he's not sure here.
I bet against it. I'm going to fade this. They're not going. There's serious volume concerns. As Alan mentioned, Cincinnati, their path to success here is through the air, and that's what Cincinnati's been doing recently anyway. Mixon will probably be more active in the passing game, so you're not going to get any rushing yards there. And we don't know what the volume is going to be for Derrick Henry, how much he's going to play. And if Henry goes over this, it's probably going to be on a big run. So if that's the case, then I would much rather take a longest rush prop for Henry, which there isn't one on the board, but there is one for Joe Mixon, and it's just 12.5 rushing yards. If Cincinnati's passing game is working, that means less guys are going to be in the box. You're going to see the rushing lanes open up, and you could easily see Mixon going over this number. He went over 12.5 rushing yards on a rush 10 times this season. In 15 games this season, he went over 10 yards on a rush. So if you're looking for a running back prop bet, I would look for Joe Mixon going over 12.5 rushing yards on a rush.
All right, Jeff, what do we think? Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon combining for 150-plus rushing yards. Do you want to chase or fade it?
Yeah, so it's kind of a tale of two running backs. I'm not very bullish, like Alan said, on Joe Mixon's prospects here. I think Tennessee is absolutely going to dominate the line. I think their defensive line is going to dominate when they're on defense, and I think it's going to make for a very tough day for Joe Mixon, at least as a runner. On the other side, I'm actually not very scared of using Derrick Henry in any situation. The volume is going to be there. Derrick Henry is the Tennessee Titans offense, and he's been practicing for like 3 weeks now. I think people are going to be very surprised at how much usage he gets in this game. The Cincinnati Bengals rush defense has been really bad of late. Their last 3 games, they allowed well over 5 yards per carry. I'm not going to chase this prop, but I do think you should be looking at betting overs on Derrick Henry. Again, you're probably getting a little bit of a suppressed target here just because of the fact that everyone's worried. Oh, is the usage going to be there? Yeah, he's active. It's a playoff game. The usage is going to be there, guys. So I think this is a very, very good matchup. And I think Derrick Henry is going to have a big day.
All right, looking at the 49ers-Packers game, one of the specials there is Deebo Samuel over 150.5 combined rush and receiving yards. The Packers will likely do everything they can to slow down Deebo, so chase or fade that he can hit this mark in Lambeau, Pierce.
I'm going to fade this. That's a pretty big number, and yeah, Green Bay is going to do everything they can to slow him down, but it's basically their system already. Debo is going to catch these low A-dot passes. He's got one of the lower A-dots in the league, or he gets the ball out of the backfield either way. That's what Green Bay lets you do. They play back. They don't put a lot of guys in the box. They'll give you 10, 15 yards, but they don't allow big plays, and that's what Debo Samuel does. He makes people miss. He gets out in open space, and he turns regular plays into big plays. But Green Bay is one of the best teams when it comes to missed tackles. Green Bay is one of the best teams when it comes to yards after catch. And then you've got the issues with Jimmy Garoppolo, so I won't go anywhere near this.
Jeff, do you want to go anywhere near it?
I mean, I'm not quite as off it as Pierce, but I'm still going to fade it as well. I think if you look at it from the odds perspective, plus 350, you're probably getting, it's pretty close to correct. You need to be getting just like a touch of value here, but I just look at this matchup, and I talked about this yesterday. I just fear that Green Bay just takes over this game, and that maybe Garoppolo ends up getting injured. And Pierce is right. Like, what Green Bay does is limit big plays well in their secondary. They limited Deebo Samuel to 5 catches on 10 targets in their first game. It was a horrible conversion rate. I don't really see why anything's going to change there. It may even get worse. So I just think with the matchup concerns, I'm going to fade Deebo. I mean, he's definitely got the capability of doing this. Maybe just gets like a 70-yard garbage time touchdown too, but it's not quite just a good enough spot for me to want to chase this, even though the odds are looking a little bit juicy.
Alan, do you want to fade Deebo in this spot?
I'm with the guys. Deebo is one of the best weapons in all the NFL, and he'll get his, but Green Bay is going to bracket him. Kyle Shanahan will still be creative enough to get Deebo the ball in a variety of ways, but it's going to be cold and nasty in Green Bay, and the 49ers are going to want to keep the ball out of Rodgers' hands and chew the clock. Deebo is going to be a major part of that game plan. Give him 10 runs as a running floor and a few screens, but that might be about it. This could be more of a George Kittle day. We haven't seen him emerge lately.
All right, last one for this segment, guys. Looking at Bills and Chiefs. The special here is Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, 10 or more passing touchdowns combined at plus 2,000. So both guys threw for 5 touchdowns last week, but there's no way they can do it again, right? So chase or fade that they get to this total on Sunday, Jeff?
I mean, I just don't think you're getting good enough odds to take a shot here. I feel like we need more closer to like plus 4,000 or something. I mean, there's just so many scenarios where even if you get a shootout type game, like Josh Allen runs for 3 touchdowns and throws 2 touchdowns or something, or even Patrick Mahomes rushes for a touchdown. And then we haven't even talked about scenarios where like the defense ends up scoring and then one of the quarterbacks just ends up having a slow day. I just don't think plus 2,000 is big enough in the odds for me to want to take a shot here. I'm expecting points, but again, I just not getting enough juice here from the old DraftKings Sportsbook to make me bullish on this one.
Alan, not good enough odds for you?
Betting against 10 touchdown is obviously a sensible thing, but plus 2,000 is interesting. I mean, if you have a $20 bill and burning a hole in your pocket, and if we get one of those pinball games, it's a nice $400 payoff for you. Realistically, the Bills have rediscovered Devin Singletary over the last month. He's likely to get the ball when they get in close, and if Singletary, if not him, it's going to be Josh Allen with sneaks. I mean, the odds aren't good enough to do it, but if you want a fun bet, it's why not? If you get pinball.
Here's my comparison. I'm betting a guy to win a golf tournament at plus 6,000 this week. So if I'm betting for 10 touchdowns, I mean, I feel like I need at least like plus 3 maybe. I don't know. That's just my.
You're absolutely right.
Pierce has something silly to say here, like, the Titans are going to lose. So.
It's not sensible, but it's a fun bet, and you're likely going to lose. So, but if you want to do it, what the heck?
We love fun, right, Pierce?
Yeah, I agree. It's a fun bet, but it should be more fun, like Jeff's mentioning here. It should be plus 4,000. It should be plus 5,000. There's just too many holes in this. I mean, you have 2 really good defenses that are at top of the league in limiting scoring. So if by some miracle there are 10 touchdowns, you need all 10 touchdowns to be passing touchdowns. That means they can't run the ball in with a running back. That means you need the quarterbacks to be active, and you need 2 active rushing quarterbacks to intentionally not run the ball into the end zone. They have to pass it into the end zone. There's just too many what ifs. The numbers should be so much higher. It's fun, but it should be more fun.
Well, this was a fun first segment of the show. Thanks, guys. Appreciate the time. As always, we're going to turn our attention to the hardwood, talking NBA after this quick break.
All right, all set, guys. Thank you again.
Yeah, that one should be plus 8,000, man.
Panel DraftKings contributor Gary and Thorne and Matt Mazelman and RotoWire's Nick Whalen. Fellas, NBA best bets time. Favorite plays on the DK Sportsbook for tonight's very small 3-game NBA slate. So, what's your favorite spread on the board for tonight, Garion?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Suns minus 2.5 against Dallas. The Mavericks have actually been the hottest team in the NBA, but I'm a little concerned. They're on the second night of a back-to-back, and the Suns are also just really, really good. Phoenix is actually 5-1 ATS in their past 6 road games, and the Devin Booker Suns in general have done very well in Dallas. They are actually 8-1 ATS their last 9 games in Dallas against the Mavericks. No DeAndre Ayton in this one, but this is a stat that isn't so much like, DeAndre Ayton's bad. This is more just, this is how good the Suns are. When Ayton's been off the court so far this season, the Suns are still outscoring their opponents by 5.6 points per 100 possessions. So I don't think it matters all that much, particularly against a Mavericks team that, doesn't have like a dominant post-interior type big man. So I'll just take the Suns minus 2.5. All
right, Matt, what about you? Favorite spread on the board?
This is a perfect segue because Garion set up why the Mavericks are larger favorites than I think they should, or why the Suns are larger favorites than I think they should be, because I'm going to the opposite side of the same bet. I actually do think DeAndre Ayton matters a decent amount. And yeah, the Suns are still a really good team when he's not playing, but they've only had Bismack Biyombo as the backup center for 6 games now. He's coming off this massive stat line against the Spurs, but I think Biyombo is probably a pretty big downgrade. And the Suns are now giving him minutes over Jalen Smith. So, that situation alone, I think, is what creates the value with Dallas. I am concerned about the back-to-back, and there is probably a small chance that Luka Doncic sits out, although the game's national TV. He'll probably play. But the Suns are at the end of a really long road trip, too. So I think that the rest and fatigue stuff balances out a little bit here. And I just think the Mavericks are really good and might be as good as the Suns are without Ayton.
All right, what do we think, Nick? Favorite spread on the board tonight?
To go to that Golden State and Indiana game. It's a big number, 11.5 in favor, of course, of the Warriors at home. But Domantas Sabonis got hurt late in that game last night against the Lakers. Didn't really sound overly optimistic based on what Rick Carlisle had to say after the game. I mean, he is not going to play tonight. Sounds like he might miss a decent chunk of time. He's basically been the entire offense for the Pacers of late. Malcolm Brogdon has missed a ton of time. He did play last night, was kind of limited. Wouldn't be surprised if he sits with that ongoing Achilles issue on the second half of a back-to-back. Of course, Miles Turner also out for Indiana. No Draymond Green for the Warriors, but I still think this is a pretty advantageous spot for a team that has Steph Curry, Andrew Wiggins, Klay Thompson. Warriors are 15-6-1 ATS at home. They're 20-12-2 ATS as a favorite. I think this is a really good spot for them to get a big win.
Matt, is there possibly an alternate spread that you think could be worth taking?
Yeah, so I'll just be the contrarian for today because I'm going to go against Nick here also. What I do agree with that he said is that I think there is a chance that Brogdon doesn't play and Sabonis is almost certainly going to be out. So the alternate spread I'm looking at is actually, I think what the current spread is, the odds will just change. So to just clarify this, the line's 11.5. I think the Warriors will get to at least minus 13 if Sabonis and Brogdon are out. And then at that point, you can bet the Pacers plus 11.5 at, let's say, plus 120 or plus 130. I'm pretty interested in the Pacers in that situation. A lot of it has to do with the Warriors just being really thin right now. And the low-key injury that does matter here, I think, is Otto Porter Jr. being out for injury management. Jonathan Kuminga is really talented, but he's still raw. He's a rookie. I don't think he's particularly good yet. And him playing a ton of minutes, I think, makes the Warriors a decent amount worse. Obviously, no Draymond Green. So I think the Pacers do have a shot to cover. But, yeah, maybe wait on this one until we get more news.
All right, Nick, alternate spread you think could be worth taking here?
Well, if you look at the DK Sportsbook, there's literally like 50 options for every game. So basically name whatever number you want and you're able to find it on DK. I think I'd bring Dallas up to something like, plus 6, plus 7. Then you're talking, minus 180, minus 200. Not fantastic value, but I'm not confident that Dallas can win this game. I'm confident they can keep it close. These guys have laid out reasonable, reasons for why Phoenix without DeAndre Ayton experiences a pretty big drop off at the 5. That Jalen Smith pick continues to look worse and worse. They're trying to find every excuse not to play a lottery pick from a couple of years ago. And Dallas has been, the hottest team in the league really over the last 10 or 12 games. Luka went for 40 last night. He looks really good. It looks like he's going to do his same thing we've seen the last couple of years where he looks bad for the first half of the season and then is like the best player in the league over the last 40 games. The biggest thing for me, though, is this is a major rest advantage for Phoenix. We have a really weird schedule all week, and it continues through the weekend. The Suns have not played since Monday, so they have a couple days off coming into this. The Mavs, of course, played late last night. I think that pushes me in favor of Phoenix, but I do think Dallas could keep it close. So I'm looking to push that number up to somewhere in the 6 to 8 range, +6, +7 Dallas.
Gary, and what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of like middle what these guys were talking about in terms of the Golden State game. We've talked a lot the past week about how important Draymond Green is, and obviously Matt brought up the importance of someone like Otto Porter Jr. But I do think there's, like, in my mind, two scenarios here. Either you see a situation where Indiana is kind of able to keep this game close and they lose in like a valiant sort of backdoor effort kind of scenario, or I just think Golden State wins by like 35, because that's kind of what they do against these bad teams at home. I mean, when you look at their average scoring margin when they play at home this season, they're outscoring teams by 14.3 points per game. Second place in the NBA is Phoenix at 8.3 points. I mean, the difference between Golden State at home versus everyone else in terms of winning margin is just mind-boggling. So I think if you want to back Golden State, instead of just taking them at -11.5, or even if it gets up to -13, maybe look at like -17, -18. I mean, you might as well get like +180, +190 when you're looking at a Golden State blowout, because I think if you think they can beat them by 15, you might as well just take them to beat them by 20, because that's kind of the margin of victory they've been having at home so far this season.
Nick, what's the total that you're most focused on? That Pacers-Warriors game has the highest total on the slate at 217.5.
I like the under on that number. I think it's pretty favorable given the situation here. Like I said at the top, no Sabonis. It really, really impacts the Pacers offense. He has been their hub for most of the season, and that's only been exacerbated with Malcolm Brogdon's injuries of late. So again, if Malcolm Brogdon doesn't play in this game, then it's, I guess, the Karis LeVert show, possibly the O'Shea Brissett show. I think there's a pretty good chance this game is played in the 90s, at least on the Pacers side. And even the Warriors, they've sputtered of late. They're still right there at the top of the West behind Phoenix, but they've been under 100 points as a team in 5 of their last 8. They've only topped 108 points once in their last 8 games. So that high scoring, team that's playing games in the 120s, 130s, that really hasn't been the Warriors for the last several weeks. That was the team we saw over the first month and a half of the season. They've been sputtering a bit. Curry still under 40% from the field over his last 25 games. That's kind of been an underrated storyline that he struggled, over the second half. The second half of the first half of the season is how I was going to phrase that. But anyway, I like the under in this game. I think Indiana, struggles to push this one and kind of carry its end of the bargain.
All right, Gary, and where are you looking? Which total are you most focused on?
I think anytime the Mavericks are on a slate, you can pretty much just blindly back the under. They're hitting the under more than any team this season. Essentially 70% of their games have gone to the under, and across their last 10, you can really see the reasons why these trends have been happening. I mean, this is a team that is allowing less than 100 points per 100 possessions in that 10-game span. That is the best defensive rating in the NBA within that stretch. Phoenix, also just one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. They are 5th in defensive rating across their last 10 games. Dallas also really, really slow pace. They are the 5th slowest pace in the NBA in that same 10-game span. I just feel like the exact script we saw last night between Dallas and Toronto, you're probably going to see that again in Dallas and Phoenix. And this line has moved down in the last half hour. It's gone from 216 to 215.5, but I still like the under here.
Matt, where are you going?
We've ignored one of the 3 games, and I guess it's because there's 2 games that feature good teams, and then we have the Knicks are playing the Pelicans. But the total for that game, I think, is going to move depending on the news of Devontae Graham, and it can move in either direction. So I don't actually know if I like the over or the under yet, but at 209.5, if Graham plays, I think that number's too low, and if Graham doesn't play, I think that number's too high. Basically what I'm saying here is Devontae Graham actually matters a lot for totals. He is the team's starting point guard. He's a really good offensive player, doesn't play a ton of defense, drives the pace to a decent extent. I don't think the game will be as fast if he's not there, but we don't know if he's going to play yet because he has an ankle injury. So if you're following news today, if Graham's in, I think the total will go up a couple points and vice versa.
Okay, so on the DK Sportsbook, you can combo a money line bet and a total from the same game. So do one of these games have a combo that makes sense here, Garion?
Well, I've talked about how I like Phoenix minus 2.5, and I like Phoenix to the under. So if you plop Phoenix on the money line and take the under in that Phoenix-Dallas game, it is plus 211 right now. So that is what I would say I would do at this point.
All right, Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards Graham not playing. So I mentioned Devontae Graham for the Pelicans with the over-under there. If you have a strong sense, like I kind of do, that Graham isn't going to suit up tonight, parlaying the Knicks money line with the under there, I think the Pelicans lose a lot offensively, and it's pretty reasonable that both of those things would come in if Graham isn't playing.
Nick, where you going?
Give me that Golden State money line and then the under on 217.5. I feel like I've already laid out the case for both of these, but you're getting that at plus 120. I really like that under. So this is really solid value considering just the Golden State money line is minus 720. That's a pretty major swing. Golden State has gone under in almost 65% of its games this season. That's the second highest figure in the league. This is the direction I'm going to keep steering viewers.
All right, let's wrap up by switching gears to DFS. So what's your favorite fantasy play on this short slate tonight, Matt?
I'm going to look to the Pacers. We don't have confirmation that Domantas Sabonis is out yet, but it seems pretty likely considering what the team said about him last night, that his ankle injury could be pretty significant. Sounds like a guy who's not playing the second night of a back-to-back at very least. So the Pacers have two big men who I think we can look at. The one who interests me the most is O'Shea Brissett. I think they'll probably split center minutes between Goga Bitadze and Isaiah Jackson, but Brissett will likely play a lot of the game as the power forward. And at 3,900, this is a guy who last year saw his price go way up above that number, I think into the 7,000s, but somewhere around that range. And you have no Sabonis, you have no Miles Turner, and potentially no Malcolm Brogdon if the Pacers decide to hold him out of this one. This could be a really shorthanded team, so they're going to need someone to score. Obviously, they have Karis LeVert, who scored a lot of points last night against the Lakers, but that's not enough. They're going to need more guys than just LeVert to score, and I think Brissett's probably the guy that picks up the slack.
All right, Nick, what do we think? Favorite fantasy play tonight?
Yeah, I'm going to go in the same direction. I mean, LeVert at 7,900, I think makes a ton of sense. 3 straight games with at least 40 DraftKings points. Decent chance he's their number one option by far tonight. I had O'Shea Brissett as well, 3,900. I mean, maybe if you want to chance it on Goga Bitadze at 3,700, both of those guys could end up seeing big minutes with Turner and Sabonis out. And then even, I'll throw out Jonathan Kuminga as well. Probably going to be a pretty popular low-cost pivot here. People are going to look at the recent game logs, and for good reason. I mean, he's been over 20 DraftKings points in 5 straight now. Doesn't have the highest ceiling, and I agree with Matt that maybe he's not a great real-life player quite yet, but he's getting a ton of minutes, and if this one turns into a blowout, like I think it will, in favor of Golden State, he probably plays 30-plus minutes.
All right, Gary, and favorite fantasy play tonight?
Yeah, I don't want to make too big a deal of $100, but it is absolute insanity that Steph Curry continues to be priced above Luka Doncic. Matt did point out there's a chance that Luka maybe sits in the second half of the back-to-back. He played 42 minutes last night. Luka famously not known for his conditioning, but I think he's probably going to end up playing. And if he doesn't, just, pivot to Jalen Brunson. It's a really easy pivot. But the fact that Doncic is at $10,400 tonight, I know it's the mechanics of a small slate. I know it's the mechanics of positioning. But this is the cheapest Doncic has been all season long. And he's coming off 2 games where he's essentially averaged 70 DraftKings points. And again, he's $100 cheaper than Steph Curry, who's shooting, as Nick said, about 25% from 3 across the last month. So I just don't understand what's happening here. You start your lineups with Luka, and then you find the value anywhere else.
All right, thank you, NBA dudes. We're talking NHL and the 9-game slate after this quick break.
All right, all set, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Back to the sweat. It is time to talk that hockey with our NHL panel, senior fantasy editor at NHL.com and host of the NHL Fantasy on Ice podcast, Pete Jensen, and RotoWire's AJ Scholes and Paul Bruno. Guys, thank you for being here. It is NHL price check time. So which players are you paying up for at the following price ranges on tonight's 9-game slate? Let's start at your favorite forward at 7K plus. Who you going with, Pete?
I'm riding the hot hand with Teemo Meyer after his 5-goal game the other day on 6 shots. This guy, even prior to that outburst, not many people probably know besides us that he is second in the NHL in even strength points behind Alex Ovechkin for the season at large. So we're talking about already one of the full-fledged breakout players in the entire league, kind of padding his totals for the season with that 5-goal game. He gets the Seattle Kraken, which obviously is a very favorable opponent, among the worst teams in the league in goals allowed per game. So I'm rolling with Meyer. If you want to get even more engaged here, maybe stack him with his line mate Tomas Hertl, who had 4 assists in that game.
All right, 7K plus range. AJ, where are you going?
Well, this will surprise nobody, but I'm going to go with Jake Guentzel tonight of the Penguins. Look, a lot of the top guys at forward have tough matchups tonight, or in the case of Colorado, they're coming into this game on the second of a back-to-back. So, Ovi is going up against Boston. McDavid goes up against the Panthers. So I'm going to go further down the board and go with Jake Guentzel. Like I said, 7,400. He's already hit the 20-goal mark this season in just 32 games. Should be a guy that pushes for 40 this year. He's on that top power play unit. He's on the ice with Sidney Crosby at even strength as well. And the matchup with Ottawa is just too good to pass up tonight when you don't have to pay up quite as much as the rest of this forward group here.
Paul, where are you going for this pick?
I had 3 names on my list, and the guys have covered 2 of them. I love the Jake Guentzel call, and I expected the homer to pick him. So I'll just add the fact that he's got 10 goals and 8 helpers in his last 10 games played. Gets the Senators a soft touch, so great matchup for Guentzel there, $7,400. Teemo Meyer, again, Pete covered that off. 8 goals, 8 assists, 10 games, 35 shots on goal, emerging as the top gun in San Jose. But the guys have left me to talk about Alexander Barkov for $7,200. He's at Edmonton, and they're a tire fire right now. 11 points, 33 shots, and 14 blocks even. His size and skill. This guy has got a mean streak, and it makes him hard to play against on any night. And tonight should be no exception with the reeling Oilers, his next victims.
AJ, who's your favorite D-man above 6K?
Look, Paul can call me a homer all he wants, but when the strategy is sound, it makes sense. So I'm going to stick with Chris Letang tonight. He's got the most points among all defensemen in the month of January. Again, top power play, easy matchup. If you're looking for maybe somebody else other than the Pens, if you're not with me on them winning this one, Alex Pietrangelo might have the best matchup on the slate going up against Montreal. But still, with the way Tanger's producing right now, I think you have to at least give him a look despite that 6K or 7K price tag.
Paul, where are you going for a D-man above 6K?
I love to kid my co-host, but he's right on the money here. And Chris Letang is first on my list, too. He's on a tear with 15 points in his last 10 games, along with 37 shots. And you can't discount the fact that he's got 19 blocks because they factor into DK scoring. He's averaging 18 points per game on the DK list. And up next behind him, I like Alex Pietrangelo at $6,900. He's another experienced defenseman who's playing a ton of minutes, averaging 27 in his last 10 games played, and gets a favorable matchup at home against Montreal. And third pick, Aaron Ekblad at Edmonton. His team scores a ton of goals, and he's got another great chance to pad those numbers. He's a big minute guy, averaging over 24 minutes per game, collecting 11 points, 25 shots on goal, and 16 blocks in his last 10 games. Finally, Miro Heiskanen, $6,200 at Buffalo. Big part of the Dallas attack and power play. He only has 6 points in his last 10 games, but I expect him to have every chance to be in high leverage minutes against a pretty ordinary club on the other side of the ice.
All right, Pete, where are you going? Favorite team man above 6K?
Paul mentioned my guy. It's Aaron Ekblad. I'm just going to jump all over. I think they had Florida. They had their blip on the radar when they lost that surprising game to Calgary the other day. I think they're going to take it to the Oilers. I do not know if the Oilers have what it takes to hang around in a game like this with how things are going south for that team. So I'm rolling Ekblad. If you want to go a little cheaper, like I said on the previous show, go Mackenzie Weegar. But Ekblad for $6,300, top 5 among defensemen this year in goals with 10, in points with nearly a point per game, and also second behind Roman Josi in shots on goal at the position. So he's a lineup lock for me, at least in my mock lineup.
All right, looking for some value at forward. Where are you looking for it tonight, Paul?
You know what? At $6,900, Jonathan Huberto is a value pick for me. He's got 20 points in his last 10 games played. That's ridiculous. 31 shots on goal and even 7 blocks, an average of almost 20 DraftKings points per game. So I think he's a must to put in there. But in terms of the cheaper guys that I want to look at, Alex Tuck for the Buffalo Sabres. He started off very well with his new club, 7 points in 7 games, quickly establishing himself as a cornerstone in the rebuilding Buffalo situation, facing a Dallas team tonight that's leaking oil. They've given up 15 goals in their last 3 games. Anze Kopitar, $4,800, one of the league's best two-way centers, and having his best offensive run in his last 4 years. Another guy I'm looking at. If Colorado decides to play run and gun, this guy will be a counterpunching all the way to the bank, I think. And finally, Chandler Stevenson, a guy I'm beating the drum for this guy all season long. Very impressed with the Knights' top center, who's lit it up to almost a point per game pace, despite the fact he hasn't played with his regular high-end wingers much of the season. He gets Mark Stone tonight on his right side and a streaking Evgeny Dadonov, who has 6 points in his last 6 games on the left.
All right, Pete, we need some value at forward.
I'll go with the storyline here because I love the way Cam Atkinson is playing lately for the Philadelphia Flyers. 15 points in his past 14 games, playing on the top line with Claude Giroux. Even if it's garbage points because the Flyers are dropping games left and right, I don't particularly care because he's been extremely productive and he's facing his former team. I mentioned the narrative. First game against the Columbus Blue Jackets. He had a lot of good memories with that team. I think he's going to try to stick it to his former guys for sure. I think he's likely to score a goal in this matchup, especially with how leaky Columbus has been at different points in recent weeks, giving up a 9 spot the other day. I mean, they give up a lot of goals. So I think Cam Atkinson will be a great value pick. And then along the lines of what Paul said about value center, Kopitar is a great one, but you can go even cheaper with Philip Deneau and how good he's been. 8 points in his past 8 games for the Kings. He'll be matched up against either Kadri or McKinnon, but I think he could do a touch of scoring as well because the Avs give up a lot of high danger chances.
AJ, where's the value at forward tonight?
I'm kind of with Paul on this one, that I think you can find some value out of Buffalo in a matchup that should be okay for them. They're playing at home. And so in addition to Tuck, Thompson comes in at 5,300 at the center position, so you can get more of that top line share. I also like San Jose in this one with the matchup against Seattle. And Logan Couture makes a lot of sense to me as well when he comes in under 5K. He's 4,900. Yes, he's on a 3-game pointless streak, but he remains in the top 6 role for them. Number 1 power play. He's not on that first line that Pete highlighted, but he will get minutes with those guys with the man advantage here. And so under 5K, I like Logan Couture as well.
All right, good stuff, guys. That's all we have time for. One more go around with our NFL guys is next. Back to our NFL panel, DraftKings contributors Pierce Dietrich and Jeff Ulrich, and RotoWire's Alan Seslowski. Guys, NFL Showdown Picks time. So top plays for this weekend's NFL Showdown contest. So I want to start with your captain's pick for Bengals Titans. Pierce, most expensive guy in the captain slot here, going to be Derrick Henry.
Yeah, well, I'm going to take Jamar Chase. You just can't stop this guy. Janoris Jenkins is not going to stop him. Good defenses can't stop him. The only person that slowed down Jamar Chase has been when the Bengals decided to run the ball for a spell during the season. Well, they're not running anymore. They're passing nonstop. He destroyed the Raiders last week. He didn't really play in the game against the Browns, but you go back to that Kansas City game, 266 yards receiving. It's insane. Against the Ravens, both games, he destroyed them. I don't see any scenario where in the biggest game of the season, Joe Burrow is not feeding the ball to Jamar Chase against a defense that will allow yards to the air. So you just got to hammer in Chase.
Jeff, we knew Pierce wasn't going to go with a guy on the Titans.
Look, I mean, absolutely, Jamar Chase has upside in this matchup. I mean, there's a couple different scenarios. Bet the Bengals could just come out and start throwing, and they could be behind. But I'm very bullish on just using Derrick Henry in showdown contests here for your captain. I think enough people are going to be scared of the workload concerns and saying, oh, well, he might only get 12 touches. I just come back to the fact this guy's been practicing for 3 weeks. They have been prepping for this in Tennessee for like 2 months now for this exact spot. And here it is. And look, we talk about the weakness of the Tennessee Titans pass defense. Well, the bigger weakness is the Cincinnati Bengals rush defense. They allowed 7.4 yards per carry to the Raiders last game, 5.9 yards per carry over their last 3 games. This is not a good rush defense. They're going to lose the battle at the line of scrimmage big time. And if they do that, Derrick Henry might run for 200 yards here. And I'm not being facetious at all. So, yeah, don't be scared. Just roster Derrick Henry.
Alan, you scared or what?
I'm very scared, but those are 2 great picks, both of those. Joe Burrow at 10-8 is the second highest price showdown on the showdown, but he's still undervalued. Earlier, I mentioned the Titans are better against the run than you think. It's going to be Joe Burrow and the pass catchers if they're going to win this game. And there's a narrative floating around that the Bengals are satisfied. They won a playoff game for the first time in decades, but Burrow doesn't strike me as that type of player. He's more of a DJAF player, right? Burrow is what Baker Mayfield wishes he was. Burrow's going to make this a dogfight, and even if they don't win, he's going to be one of these interesting early season MVP talks for next year. I like Burrow as my captain.
All right, let's move on to that 49ers-Packers game. Jeff, most expensive guy in the captain spot by far going to be Davante Adams at $17,400.
Yeah, I mean, last week I was making cases for value guys, and a lot of these value guys, they just didn't pan out. I'm going to stay away from that strategy here. It's Davante Adams, man. I mean, I think this is the spot where you've got everything just seems to be going in Green Bay favor right now, and I think this could be a spot where Green Bay ends up winning by 20. And if they do get up, they're not going to let up because it's a playoff game. Davante Adams absolutely cut through the San Francisco secondary back in week 3. And really nothing has changed. San Francisco's got a good pass rush, but now Nick Bosa is also, questionable. And quite frankly, the Packers did a good job of containing him in the first matchup. So Davante Adams here, I think is going to have an absolutely monster game. I think you're going to see most of the offense from Green Bay flow through him. And I think you should just pay up again. Let other people get fancy.
Alan, what do you think? You want to pay all the way up to that $17,400 price tag?
I'm a little frugal. I want to go with Elijah Mitchell, the running back on San Francisco at 12-3. It's my pick. Jimmy G's hand is not going to be 100%, and the 49ers are likely going to want to control the ball in that freezing cold environment. Mitchell was a 6th-round steal for this team, and when healthy, and he is this weekend, they have shown they want to feed him the ball. Mitchell has that 3-down skill set, and he's got fresh legs. If you're in a large field tournament, though, one of my sneaky strategies is, and it almost never works, by the way, is to captain the backup quarterback, and Trey Lance at 9K is going to be almost non-existently owned. And if Jimmy G doesn't make it out of that first quarter, you have a high upside cheap captain all to yourself.
All right, Pierce, who are you putting in the captain spot?
I'm going to go with the receiver just like Jeff and the same receiver. It's going to be Davante Adams. As he mentioned before, 12 catches on 18 targets for 120 yards against San Francisco the first time. San Francisco might be worse this time around. We know that Green Bay is going to be better. Aaron Rodgers is about as healthy as he's been in weeks. They're coming off the bye week. He's the best receiver in football. I don't expect Green Bay to completely blow out San Francisco, so they're going to have to feed him the ball consistently. And that's what they've done. 120 catches this season, for over 1,500 yards, 11 touchdowns. The biggest game of the year. They're healthy. I'm pretty sure the ball is going to go to Adams a lot in this game.
All right, Alan, Rams, Bucks. Who's your captain's pick in this one? No surprise, Cooper Kupp is the top price guy at $17,100.
Give me a little Matt Stafford over here. He hadn't been playing well over the last month of the season, and I know a lot of sharp bettors took the Cardinals money line last week, believing Stafford didn't have what it takes to get the Rams playmakers the ball, and based on his prior play, you can't really blame them. The Rams are going to be a popular upset pick this week, and Stafford and Kupp are so in sync they can basically complete each other's sentences at this point, and Stafford trusts Odell Beckham, and last week Stafford even had a rushing touchdown. Matt Stafford and Sean McVay look locked in, and he represents the best value with the low rostership upside.
All right, Pierce, who are you going with?
Giovanni Bernard. Save you a little bit of money here. Now, you got to make sure that Leonard Fournette is not going to play. If Fournette plays, then you might want to just move Bernard to a regular spot, not captain him. But it looks like Fournette's not going to be ready. And Bernard had 13 rushes last week, got goal line work, 7 targets out of the backfield. And when the game was close, Bernard was the lead running back. So I would imagine in this close matchup, he's going to get the majority of the work. And we're also expecting, with these two good rush defenses playing, we're probably going to see a pass attack type of game. And if they're passing more, which Tampa Bay tends to do, then you're going to see Bernard get the most amount of action.
All right, Jeff, who are you putting in the captain spot?
Yeah, much like Pierce, I think this is a game where you don't necessarily have to pay up at the top for your captain spot. I mean, I think there's some interesting value options there, but I'm also just not necessarily expecting like a shootout type of game here. I think Tyler Higbee is actually very interesting here. We saw him pop up with 2 touchdowns a couple games ago. No one's going to be using him, but if you do use Higbee there, and realistically, if you get like 1 touchdown, you're going to be able to fit in maybe both quarterbacks, Kupp and Stafford. And the thing about Higbee is here, like Pierce is right, how are the Rams going to run the ball against Tampa Bay? Like, I just don't think it's going to happen. So you're going to get more targets for guys like Van Jefferson and Tyler Higbee. And I think this is a very good spot to deploy Tyler Higbee, just from the simple fact that, from a showdown standpoint, if we're not expecting that many points, you're going to be able to get in all those studs. So.
All right, captain's pick for Bills Chiefs. Pierce, who are you going with?
Give me Josh Allen. I think you got to play the studs in this game. I know there's this Devin Singletary narrative. Oh, he's going to be great and he's playing well. But that was also a game that they were well ahead. This is going to be a competitive game. It's going to be a close game. It's going to be a Josh Allen game. He was nearly perfect last week, which was pretty amazing. A quarterback rating over 150 against a team that was very familiar with him. If he's playing that well, I imagine he's going to continue to play well this week. Also, Kansas City gets a lot of pressure on the quarterback, but do not sack the quarterback, which means Josh Allen will scramble, he will run, and more than likely his receivers are going to be covered by a pretty strong secondary in Kansas City. So I'm pretty bullish that he's going to go over 100 yards rushing. He's going to run the ball in the end zone. His prop at passing-wise is 268. I think he's absolutely going to crush, and you just pay up for him.
All right, Jeff, who's your captain?
Oh, man. I mean, I really wanted to make a case for Cole Beasley here, because I feel like if you use Cole Beasley in the captain spot, you can just fit in everybody else. So I do think that's an option. I'm going to stick to my thing, what I said earlier, though. We'll stop mentioning these scrubs. I mean, okay, well, there's Cole Beasley. Let's just make it Cole Beasley. I was going to say Tyreek Hill. But let's talk about Cole Beasley a bit. I mean, if we're expecting a shootout type of game here, folks, like everybody's going to be scoring points. And we have seen this with Kansas City in the past in these higher scoring games that, you need to get in all the studs. So taking a shot with the value play in the captain spot, it makes sense. Beasley is one of those players who he will just pop up out of nowhere with Josh Allen with 12 targets. And I really feel like at some point in this game, because they're playing Kansas City and because the Bills probably aren't going to have another perfect offensive game, you're going to see Josh Allen just have to chuck the ball a lot more this week. I think Cole Beasley should be the value target. You target with the captain spot. But if you just don't like that strategy, you think I'm an idiot, just use Tyreek Hill.
All right, Alan, real quick, who you put in the captain spot?
I'll go right to Jerick McKinnon in the scrubland here. When fish are in the pond, and I expect all the brand name players to be captain. So if you want a chance to win it all, go contrarian, go Jerick McKinnon. He's a highly skilled player, and when healthy, he showed that he has a 150 total yard and a pair of touchdown upside.
All right, good stuff, guys. Thank you. We're back with the Sweat tomorrow at 11 a.m. Madden Sims are up next. Bucks at Browns at noon. Then hang out for the slate tonight at 5 p.m. for more on the NFL with